for me, the numbers tell one story and your eyes tell another. The numbers are going to say that Caleb Williams didn't have a great game, that he was inaccurate, particularly in that first half. He obviously really struggled. In the second half, I thought he made plays that no other quarterback in the league makes. I view Caleb Williams as a rookie quarterback on a ridiculous ascension. He made some plays yesterday that were jaw-dropping. He misses at the very end, and obviously the team winds up losing the game. I emerge feeling great about Caleb Williams from that game.
Yeah, so do I. Bears bullied the defending Super Bowl champs in Philadelphia. Yeah, they could not knock out their hated neighbors in Green Bay, though. Gave them a hell of a fight, that's for sure. Meant the Bears were knocked off the top spot in the NFC to the 7th seed with 4 games to go. Let's pick it up with a good friend of mine. He's one of the best in the business, former co-worker here in Chicago, now one of the faces of ESPN, Mike Greenberg. Greeny, how are you, buddy?
I am great. Lou, it has been much too long since you and I have had a chance to catch up, and I double down on everything that I said that you just played. I 100% believe it, and it sort of led to a lengthy debate that we had on our show this morning about Caleb Williams and the final play and all of that. I won't bore the audience with all the details beyond to say I think Caleb Williams and the entire Bears team, for that matter, are light years ahead of schedule. What we are living in right now, and look, I am married to I married into a Chicago Bears family. So my wife, born and raised in Chicago, and I had my nephews over with all of his buddies wearing jerseys watching the game yesterday. So I watched the game purely through Bears colored glasses. And I emerged feeling better about them than I did before the game began. I felt better about the Bears and their prognosis, both short-term and long, after losing that game than I felt before it started.
By the way, Greeny's a terrific follow if you're on social media, on Twitter. And you tweeted last night, buddy, Caleb Williams is going to be a superstar. Hasn't even scratched the surface. Makes as many I can't believe what I just saw plays as any young quarterback in years. Has the right coach, too. They're going to be unstoppable. And earlier this morning, we just played the clip from Get Up. What's the argument still? Why are people still not buying into Caleb?
I guess what Dominique Foxworth, the concern he was expressing is a level of inaccuracy. And Dan Orlovsky, whose quarterback stuff I generally hold in extraordinarily high esteem, points out that he does tend to miss the layups every now and again. He does the astonishing things. All of the entire league is trying to find someone who has these Mahomes-like qualities. Well, the Bears have found someone exactly like that. He does things that literally no one but Patrick Mahomes and maybe Josh Allen can do. He had 3 or 4 of those plays in the second half last night. The pass up the right sideline to Kmet being the most notable one. And then the touchdown they throw on first down, which I didn't love that call anyway, on 1st and goal from the 1. But that's a ridiculous play. He has a cannon for an arm. He throws it so well when he's running to his right. And obviously his ability to use his legs is difference-making. Yes, sometimes he tends to miss the layup. Sometimes there's an easy play to be made, and he either throws it inaccurately or he doesn't make it. But again, I want to repeat something that you heard me say in that clip. I consider Caleb Williams to be a rookie. In fact, I'm not 100% sure I don't consider him to be one step behind all the other rookies. I thought last year was such an abject disaster that the first job Ben Johnson had to do was deprogram anything that had been inputted into Caleb Williams before he could start building him up. He almost had to break down all of the things that had been done wrong before you started doing them right. So this is a player who is at the very beginning of his ascension. He can do things that are so spectacular. And I believe he showed you he isn't, the moment isn't too big for him. He has shown that repeatedly this year. Some of the well documented, and obviously everyone watching this conversation knows every one of these games by heart. But the comeback wins, the last second drives, the Cincinnati one in particular jumps to mind, and a few others, the game against the Giants. And even in this game, he leads them right down there. The play at the very end, I think, is just a bad throw.
Did you like the play call?
That he probably should have made. I think Caleb Williams is on the verge of being an absolute superstar.
Did you like the call? Did you like the play called on that last play?
I did. Look, here's the thing. The 3rd and 1, now you've got 3rd and 1. I think that the Bears won from, at least if you were listening to Tom Brady on the telecast, The Bears are in that moment thinking about two things. They're thinking about scoring and they're thinking about the clock. And I think that was the mentality. When they don't pick up the first down on third down, which I think surprised everyone, particularly them, now all of a sudden the mentality has to change. Now all of a sudden it's do or die here. They had just run the ball directly into the line and gotten absolutely nowhere. Now, there's a part of me that says you need 1 yard, give the ball to Monangai, who is so good between the tackles, and run it behind that huge interior offensive line. And if you can't pick up 1 yard there, then you don't deserve to win the game. But I actually do like the play call, and I actually think it worked. That led to a bit of a debate on our show this morning. And Dan explained to me that isn't Caleb's first read, so it isn't the first spot that he goes. But that's the exact play that won the game in Philadelphia or iced the game in Philadelphia. And in my opinion, if he gets rid of that ball a half a second earlier and he puts it out towards the back pylon, that's a touchdown. And the conversation this morning is entirely different. So the last thing on earth I'm doing is questioning Ben Johnson, who I think is the best thing that has happened to the Chicago Bears since Mike Ditka. And if he thinks it was the right play call, then I'm 100% behind him.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. And I'm a huge fan of Dan Orlovsky, so I hate to question. He played the position. I didn't in the NFL. But let me just throw these numbers at you. 6 straight games, his percentage, Caleb's completion percentage, below 60%. Just a fourth quarterback the last 11 seasons to go through a stretch like this. And you brought up Josh Allen's name. And Allen is one of those 4 quarterbacks. He went through an 8-game stretch without completing 60% of his passes in his rookie season. And I agree with you. I consider this to be Caleb's rookie season, considering what he went through last year. Do you see any similarities? Does Dan see any similarities between Allen and Caleb Williams?
Yes. And look, just because we respect Dan doesn't mean that we can't disagree. I disagree with him completely on this. And I would add to this as well. A sack or / negative play is way worse than an incompletion. And last year, and the knock on Caleb going back to college was his propensity to run around back there and take terrible sacks. And, sacks we always hear is more a quarterback stat than it is an offensive line stat. I think that's one of the things they're deprogramming, and I think that's working. I think he is getting rid of the ball. We see him routinely throw the ball into the seats at times that he absolutely should. Those incompletions are not negative plays. If the play isn't there to be made, throw it away and live to fight another day rather than taking a 7-yard sack that is going to end a drive. So I don't think all incompletions are created equally. Clearly, there are some plays, there are some circumstances where you see a little bit of that inaccuracy, where the mechanics aren't right, and he winds up usually, at least in I'm seeing him, you watch every snap, I see most of it, where he winds up throwing the ball short. I think those are things that one can work on. I think Josh Allen is an outstanding comp. I think that Josh Allen had a really good quarterback coach in Brian Daboll, and they turned him into, he to his everlasting credit, he worked like crazy. And he has turned into a guy who now is one of the best quarterbacks that ever lived. And for 15 years, the Bills are going to be a Super Bowl contender because they have him. I think Caleb is on that trajectory. I absolutely do. It's obviously premature to say that he's there or to guarantee that he's there, but I see every reason to believe he has a chance to get there. And the most important factor in that is the coach. Ben Johnson is the goods. I mean, he is so good. I love that he and LaFleur hate each other. There's nothing in the world better than that. You and I go back to Ditka and Forrest Gregg and all the rest of that. I love it. Like, good, healthy dislike between the Bears and the Packers is the best thing the Bears could possibly have. The Packers have been kicking the Bears' behinds forever, basically since Brett Favre got there. How long is that? 35 years. So, I mean, for Ben Johnson to go in there and say, I'm not kissing their rings. We're here to beat those guys, and go in there and almost do it at Lambeau, and they're going to beat them at Soldier Field a week from Saturday. I think the Bears are, again, I said this in a radio I was on with Waddle and Sylvie probably 6-7 weeks ago. And I said, the success of this season should not be measured by the one-loss record. It should be measured by the progress of the quarterback. If at the end of the year you say to yourself, we've got the guy, then this season was a success. Well, the Bears have so obliterated that, to their everlasting credit, to the credit of all of those players, particularly that offensive line, which is ridiculous, and Swift and Monangai, and to the credit of Caleb and primarily to the credit of Ben Johnson. They've now gone from a team that was horrendous last year or laughing stock last year to a team that we are going to be genuinely disappointed if they don't win the most competitive division in the entire NFL. That in and of itself is an extraordinary statement about the job that Ben Johnson is doing. And there is no team, not one team in the NFL whose future I would trade for the Bears right now.
It's almost as great as the Indiana turnaround, but I won't get into college football right now. Hey, man, what's happened to DJ Moore? I mean, I just don't like it. His numbers are the worst of his 8-year career. I don't know why he's not a bigger part of this offense. He's fallen behind Odunze, Loveland, Komet, Burden. I just don't get it. He's making a lot of money as well.
Right.
Why are they not keeping him involved?
That is one where I would defer to the expertise of people who are watching them play in, play out in a way that I am not. Clearly, I'm aware that he is no longer like that's a guy that I think they felt. Well, the previous regime felt that they were going to build the program around, or he was going to be one of the cornerstones of the program. And these coaches they're so particular, right? They have very specific desires of what they want from each individual player in each individual position. And for whatever reason, he doesn't fit into what it is they're looking to do. But I have less concern about that because I think Luther Burden and Rome Odunze are ready to become stars. Odunze is spectacular, and I think Burden, who is obviously coming on, and again, you guys see it every single snap of every single game, I think Burden is about a year away from being a star. So I think that's your future. The future of this offense is Burden on one side, Odunze on the other side, Loveland with a two-headed running back attack, which right now is Swift and Monangai, and those guys obviously, I don't know if they're as good as the two guys in Detroit, but you can feel the similarities. That big offensive line and a quarterback who I think is a year away from being better than Jared Goff. It would be disrespectful to what Goff has accomplished to say that right now Caleb Williams is better. But there's no team in the NFL that if you were saying they could start a team right now, no one would take Goff before they would take Caleb. So I think this team is Ben Johnson is building exactly what he had in Detroit. And what he had in Detroit has been the best team in the NFC for 3 years. And if they can make a couple of moves on defense, I can tell you right now, the Bears are going to be a very sexy pick to win next year's Super Bowl. And the fact that they're doing it this quickly, they're this far ahead of schedule, I think I don't want to say it's gravy because the year has been too good to sort of write off that way. But there's nothing that can happen the rest of this year that will mean it was not an overwhelming success.
Greeny, keep it on defense. Lives by the takeaways. I get it. How far do you think this Bears team can go with this defense?
Well, takeaways are such a fluky statistic. Not exclusively, because there are things that you do that create them. But by and large, they tend to come in bunches and then they tend to dry up. So I don't think it's something you can count on. This obviously is not a great defense. The Packers have a better defense than the Bears do. The Seahawks have a better defense than the Bears do. The Rams have a better defense than the Bears do. You wouldn't have known it from the game last Friday, but the Eagles have a better defense. So if you're looking at the top teams in the NFC right now, the Bears would be at or near the bottom of the list on defense. So to me, that's what the offseason is for. That's where you address those needs. The Bears are set up on offense. The Bears offense requires tiny little tinkering, but you go into this offseason and you make one or two, whatever it is in the draft or in free agency or where have you, any sort of trades where you address the defense and turn that into an let's call it average to above average NFL defense, even if you don't still turn the ball over or force the turnovers at the level of frequency you are now, which generally, again, is something you can't count on. I think that's more than enough because I think this offense has a chance to be absolutely outstanding.
NFC, crazy good at the top. Bears, the obvious example, dropping from the top spot to the 7th seed. They've got 4 games left. You think they need to win 2 of the final 4 to get to the party?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. To get into the playoffs, period. See, you've got San Francisco's schedule the rest of the ways. I think the Bears are a better team than the 49ers. I think the Bears would have a better chance of doing damage in the NFC playoffs than the 49ers. But the 49ers have an easy schedule. And look, you got to give all the credit in the world to their coaching with everything they've lost. So I think the problem that you have is you're going to get 3 teams out of the West. I think you're going to get the Rams, you're going to get the Seahawks, and you're going to get the 49ers. That leaves one spot. So who does that leave you fighting it out with? With Detroit and the Packers. When someone's going to win the North, it's very unlikely to be the Lions. The Bears still get their crack at the Packers in 12 days, so they could still win the division. But obviously, you're talking about a scenario in which they don't. You've got to hold off the Lions. Nobody in the South really scares me, and the Cowboys don't scare me. So, frankly, they probably do get in with 2 more wins, right? You've probably looked at all the permutations more closely than I have. They probably do get in with 2 more wins. But if one of them is Green Bay in 12 days, then all of a sudden, I think we're going to go back to having conversations about being the 1 seed, because the Rams and Seahawks still have to play each other. Like, those divisions are going to cannibalize each other a little bit. That game at the very end of the season, that game is in Chicago, right? Lions, Bears, the last week is in Chicago.
Game. Yeah.
That could easily wind up being for a playoff spot. That could be for the Bears playing for the division too. So they probably do need to win their last 2 of the last 4. If one of them is Green Bay, I think it changes the paradigm completely.
Biggest surprise in the league this season? AFC, NFC, doesn't matter, either good or bad. What do you think?
Well, it's a good question.
Kansas City
I would
not
say the Bears
in?
would be high on the list of positive surprises. I thought the Bears would be an improved and improving team. The idea that we would be having conversations about them being the 1 seed in the NFC in December never entered my mind. So we start there. I think the Vikings have been a colossal disappointment. I am stunned, flabbergasted. Kevin O'Connell is someone that I think is just an outstanding coach. And if they really missed this badly on this quarterback decision, yesterday notwithstanding, because the Commanders are just terrible, then that would be an enormous surprise to me. I guess the Commanders are a surprise. I thought that they were a candidate for regression. I think it was a sexy pick to say they might regress a little. They've regressed a lot more than I think most people were expecting. Again, right now, they may be the worst team in the whole league. I didn't expect New England to get this good this fast. So New England would definitely be a positive, a very, very positive surprise. The Broncos are probably exceeding expectations in the AFC. And then as far as a disappointment
Chiefs
in the AFC, I guess look, if you had told me Burrow was going to miss almost the whole year, the Ravens would be a huge surprise and a disappointment. They were a popular pick to go to the Super Bowl this year out of the AFC. A lot of the people who do this, like I think Pro Football Focus ranked them the best roster in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I know that Lamar has been hurt, but they've been underwhelming to say the very least. I think they got completely screwed on a couple of calls yesterday that cost them that game, but they still haven't been nearly as good as they should be.
Holidays, they're upon us. And I know you back in September, I think you released another book, right?
Yes, I did.
Tell me about it. Got Your Legends.
The book is out. It would make a great gift for anybody who
Yes.
loves sports. It's called Got Your Legends, and it's available right now. In the book, we identify the Mount Rushmore, the 4 legendary faces, the 4 defining people of every franchise in all 4 of the major sports. And that was what I was talking to Waddle and Sylvie about that day that I referenced. So we've got the 4 people who define the Bears and the 4 people who define the Cubs and the White Sox and the Bulls and the Blackhawks and every other team in all of the sports. So if you know anyone who loves sports history and sports debate, it might make an outstanding holiday gift.
I love it. By the way, which sports franchise and iconic figure in Chicago ranks number 1 in Greeny's opinion?
Well, so each team has their own. The Bears rated the highest out of any of the franchises, followed closely by the Bulls, because the Bulls had that era that obviously, and that's when you and I met. And, we lived through that. You know what's funny? Do you have a minute for a digression? I don't know how much time we have.
Yeah, of course. I've got all kinds of time.
Okay, great. So you and I met, when you were covering the Bulls and you were doing all the sideline stuff when they were the Beatles, and I was covering them for the Score. And it was such a thrilling time. Obviously, it shaped your life and my life, both professionally and otherwise. I mean, it's an experience that I wouldn't trade for anything to have been around that group. And when we were doing the Bulls Mount Rushmore, I said, to Hembo, who is my researcher and who partners with me on all these book projects. I said, we have to choose all 4 legends from that era. Because even though Derrick Rose was an MVP, and even though Bob Love is in the Hall of Fame, and even though Jerry Sloan and Norm Van Leer, and there have been a lot of other really great players, the Bulls are defined by that era. And so we put Michael and Scotty and Phil, which were the obvious ones, on the list. And then I certainly thought about Rodman, but it has always been my belief that the first 3-peat teams were actually better, even though the second ones became more legendary and they won 72 games in 96. I've always believed that the Horace Grant teams were better. So I didn't feel good putting that. So I put Jerry Krause, and I got a lot of pushback on that. And, you know, Lou, you were there every day. You were around them even more than I was. I think Jerry Krause is one of the most unfairly remembered, iconic figures in my sports lifetime. You know, Jerry was cantankerous, and he was disheveled in his appearance. Of that, there is no question. And he didn't go out of his way to make friends. And he and I were not friends. I was a kid. He was a grown-up. I didn't have a relationship with him beyond every now and again asking him a question with a microphone. But I think the job he did generally managing those teams, literally putting in place brick by brick every single piece of those teams except for Michael Jordan, and that's obviously an enormous except for, but Jordan's the greatest player ever, but he wasn't going to win 6 championships without someone pulling all the rest of the strings brilliantly. I think the fact that he died without going into the Hall of Fame and had to go in posthumously, and the fact that when people remember him now, they do so at times almost with vitriol, and certainly at times with what feels like a laugh at his expense, I think is extremely unfair. And I got a lot of pushback on that. Out of all the things that we did in the book, that probably was the one that people pushed back on the most, but it's the one that I feel the most strongly about. You know, Jerry Krause found Phil Jackson was the coach of the Albany Patroons in the CBA, who had been a hippie who was too weird for the NBA when he finished playing, and no one even considered him as a coach. Jerry Krause handpicked him, brought him to Chicago, moved out Doug Collins in a very controversial move, elevated Phil Jackson. They never win 6 titles if that doesn't happen. He traded Will Perdue straight up for Dennis Rodman. He saw Tony Kukoc overseas at a time when this was not really a thing, and brought Kukoc in, and Kukoc was a huge part of 3 of those championships. He had a revolving door of guys like Trent Tucker and Craig Hodges, and not to mention, obviously, Steve Kerr and others who came in and were extraordinarily important parts of winning all those championships. So you just made me think of it. Those were the 4 that we picked for the Bulls, who slotted in just slightly behind the Bears in Chicago history. And it has not sat well with me. People continue to yell at me about that, and it just never sits right with me.
I'm glad that you brought up Jerry Krause. I recently on this show had Horace Grant and Charles Oakley come in studio, and we talked about the impact that Jerry Krause made on both of their lives, because he selected them both in the draft. And you're right, he's unfairly criticized. Hey, listen, the book is called Got Your Legends, Ranking America's Sports Franchises and Most Iconic Figures. Again, you can get it on Amazon?
You can get it anywhere books are sold. If you go anywhere that you can buy a book and you don't find it, let me know, because it should be there.
All right, and I just want to end with, man, it's such a good time for us. I know you were here going to Northwestern. We worked together at WMAQ CLTV. You went to the Score. We worked on the Bulls beat together. Hey, man, the rivalry with the Packers finally means something. Isn't that great?
It is. And think about all of the water under the bridge. Whoever would have thought? I knew Lou Canellis back at a time when no one thought that Lou Canellis would be married for decades and have a little daughter. And this is how much time has gone by. You knew me right after I graduated from Northwestern. I now have 2 kids who've graduated from Northwestern. My daughter graduated in 23, and my son graduated in this past June. So that's how much time has gone by since you and I met. I was a recent Northwestern graduate at that point, and I am now the parent of 2 recent Northwestern graduates.
I love hearing that. My daughter's 7 years old, so we've got some time to catch up before my daughter's headed to Northwestern.
Bask in it. Let me tell you, just cling to every minute of it. Or what I always tell all parents is the things that you find most challenging about it now are the things that you will miss desperately when they are gone. And if I could do it all again, I would. I don't know that I would do anything differently, except that I hope that I would appreciate it all a little bit more, because it all goes by fast. And it really is, when they say it's the best time in your life, it really is the best time in your life.
My friend, listen, I will end with this. Last night, Sunday night, sitting in this chair that I'm sitting in right now talking to you, I was doing my Bear shows, and she was behind the cameras watching Daddy for the first time ever. And she was giving me the thumbs up and came over to give me a kiss afterwards. It meant everything. Buddy, thank you so much for the time. You're an incredible person, a great friend. Please say hello to Stacy, and I hope we can visit again when the Bears make that playoff run in January, all right?
Anytime. This was fun. It's great to see you again, Lou. Thanks for having me.